Hello, my name is Lohr. I teach AP Physics, Physics, and Wilderness Survival at Rochester Adams, as well as serve as the head coach of the cross-country team and the track and field team. Going into my senior year of high school, I knew that I wanted to go into education. And it was that year that I took my first physics course and fell in love with the topic. I've taught water safety instruction. I'm a certified scuba instructor, and that just kind of naturally rolled right into education. Within 6 months of graduating from Eastern Michigan, I was hired by Rochester Adams, and this year will begin my 17th year of teaching for Rochester Adams. The role that I am allowed to play in your students' lives is a role that I do not take lightly. I'm very proud to hopefully serve as another trusted adult in your students' lives. And the way things are going this year, I think they could probably use all of the support they can get, and that's my role here, in addition to teaching them whatever material it is that we're trying to cover. So before we begin anything, I'd just like to make sure that you and your student is aware that I am here for any needs that you might have, being that we have so much uncertainty as we go through everything this year. The best way to contact me would be through my email, elohre@rochester.k12.mi.us. And with all the different platforms and programs that we're using nowadays, I get flooded with alerts and everything else. So I deeply apologize if I miss an email from you. Please don't hesitate to email me if you think I've missed it or have forgotten it, because it is certainly possible that in the avalanche of emails we get every day, as I'm sure you are aware, that I may have missed something. Usually when we are in the building, I teach across the hall from my lovely wife, who teaches life sciences, including pathology and AP biology. Starting off remotely, instead of her being across the hall, she's in the office, one office over, so we get to spend the day together. We have 2 children who are at Delta Kelly currently. My son is a 2nd grader who has Mrs. Baroni, who I think has been between Musson Elementary and Delta Kelly, and then my daughter's a 4th grader, and she currently has Mrs. Monroe. So far, their remote learning experience has been a positive one, and I hope that I am able to make the learning experience remote version for your student a positive one as well. When Mr. Short retired from Rochester Adams, at this point, nearly 10 or 12 years ago, I was very excited that I was the one tabbed to continue the wilderness survival class. Quite frankly, no one else wanted to teach it, so it wasn't a big battle to have it. But being outside, being outdoors is a big part of my own personal lifestyle and the lifestyle of my family. Besides coaching outside 2 seasons out of 3 at Rochester Adams, going outside, running. My son now knows how to ride a bike and is keen on getting out there and riding bikes all the time. Hiking in the woods. Before children, there were a lot of ski trips out west and hiking trips out west and climbing trips out west, and they are now finally to that age where we can start doing that again. I've done wilderness first aid classes. I'm a certified scuba instructor. So a lot of my life, like I said, is spent outdoors, and my mind's always wandering and always thinking about what if this and what if that, and that's a lot of what our wilderness survival class is going to be. So it kind of was right up my alley, so I was very pleased when I was able to start teaching this thing about 10 years ago. We're going to try to cover a lot of content. With the remote learning, it's going to be a bit of a challenge because this class is mostly discussion. It's a lot of, quite frankly, I'm going to be telling a lot of stories, either real life stories or hypothetical scenarios, and we're going to do our best to try to continue having those in this remote setting. And I know it's going to be a challenge. We do a lot of hands-on, starting with fire building and shelter building and compass use and GPS use. And I'm not sure how that's going to look in the remote setting, and that's something that we're kind of still working toward. It's my hope that we stick with our October 1st deadline and we're able to get back into the classroom, but I understand that might not be reasonable. And so we will do our best. And we do lots of articles to read. We do lots of videos from YouTube. So a lot of what we can do, or a lot of what we'll do, they can do on their own through their computer. And we're going to do our best to make it the best experience possible going through all of our wilderness survival concepts. Typically, I give them a rope, a strand of rope, and they're going to learn 13 knots that all have a unique use. And then usually in December, they would have their knot test where they simply tie the knots for me, and if they tie it right, they get an A+. So I don't know if I'll be able to get a rope to your student, if I am allowed to invite your students into the building, maybe at the beginning of one of my cross-country practices. They walk up to the tennis courts, I give them a rope, and they walk on off. So I always try to do that every year, is give the students a 4-foot strand of 1/4-inch rope that they can use to practice their knot tying. So if they have their own ability to find some rope, great, but I'm going to try to get them something that they can use so they can practice their knots. And I assign all the knots today, and they have until December to learn them. I give them some good websites, and they can practice and practice and practice. If we were in person, we would spend a little bit of time on every single knot where I teach them right in front of them. But most people learn their knots by looking at a book or by looking at an internet clip or looking at a website. So the students will have the ability to learn their own knots. They're not going to need me to show them, but I'm going to try to show them as much as possible, especially when we're in person. It's really easy to show them the knot in their hand and what they should be doing to make that knot, to tie it accurately. When it comes to grading for wilderness survival, we have outdoor activities that we grade, we have in-class activities, we have knowledge tests, as I call them, and we have skill tests. How to use a map, how to tie their knots, building a fire, and getting it started with a single match. All these different types of activities, they're going to be weighted in the grade book. And because each quarter has a different ratio of assignments, for example, once November rolls around, we don't go outside much anymore, simply because the weather has turned and we've done all of our outdoor activities already. So semester 1 has a lot of the outdoor activities, and anytime we go outside, if they're acting appropriate, if they are putting in time and effort and learning, they get a 10 out of 10. It's almost like a homework assignment. So those are easy grades. Second quarter, we don't have those. So when we're doing our body physiology and learning about hypothermia or altitude sickness or water purification, when we're doing that, there's no outdoor aspect to it. So the 2 quarters, in my mind, aren't graded the same, and so to have quarter 1 and quarter 2 and average them together doesn't make as much sense as simply looking at the entire semester as one body of work. So instead of the 40-40-20 weight system that we have for quarter 1, quarter 2 and exam, instead we're going to have an 80-20. So it'll be one big bucket, if you will, one big spreadsheet of grades. And so that's how their semester grade will be determined. And obviously if they are not taking the exam for whatever reason, then their entire score is the semester averaged together instead of quarter 1 and quarter 2. So obviously to start off our year, we are relying heavily on our computers and on the internet. So what I'd like to do is talk about your class and discuss the different programs and apps and platforms that we will be using. And I understand that there's a lot of classes and a lot of platforms out there, so I do try my best to try to streamline and consolidate as much as possible so that your student doesn't have to memorize 15 different logins and 15 different websites. So that is my goal. So let's begin, and if you have any questions, please email me as often as you would like. And the computer's always on at the house, so it's usually a constant update, so I should be able to respond rather quickly. Well, first and foremost, we're going to be using Google Classroom like all the other classes this year. I am new to it starting last March, and so slowly all of my material will start to accumulate here, but it is a work in progress. We have our stream page where I have our Zoom meetings and videos that we're supposed to be watching and things like that. Any upcoming assignments are going to be listed over here on the left-hand side. When I click on classwork, I have our basic class information like syllabus, things like that. And then anything that has a little clipboard is an assignment that requires something to be done. So whether it's watching a video or whether it is an article. So if I click on survival is an attitude, I have an article to read, and then I have an assignment where I can actually type in my answers, submit through Google Classroom, and then I'll be able to see that. So that's what we're going to use with our Google Classroom. Some of these are not things that they're going to be turning in. So for example, here they had some videos to watch, and that was it. So there's nothing to turn in, but it does show up on their calendar of things to do, and so I will be doing that quite often. And if it's something that doesn't need to be turned in, I have started to get in the habit of, under the information, literally saying, do not turn in, so the students realize there's nothing to actually submit. Edmodo is the platform that I used to use, and so all of my information is still here. So if you log into edmodo.com, make yourself an account and log in. This right here is the class code. If you do that, I have under folders, that's where all my information is. I've got everything on here that we're going to be using. Anything that's electronic that I will eventually get to Google Classroom is already here. So students and adults alike are encouraged to jump on here. Wilderness survival, our NOT section. So I've got the NOT test. Looks like I need to update that one. Probably the website that we're going to be using, things like that. So I highly recommend, if you don't mind one extra login. Nothing will be assigned here. This is completely optional, but you should consider using Edmodo. That would be a strong recommendation. So as it relates to our class online, we have our Google Classroom, Edmodo, and we'll be using a lot of YouTube. I got a lot of videos, whether things I've made or things that I found, so we'll be doing a lot of those as well. So we will, when we use our Zoom meetings, we will do a lot of little rooms, little breakout rooms as they're called, so that 3 or 4 students can discuss with each other before coming back and looking at it as a whole group. So we'll be doing a lot of that, because I know students are going to be more willing to participate when it's just a small group instead of having to unmute yourself in front of 30 other students. So those are the electronic resources that we have, and obviously you can send any questions you might have about any of these, but all of your athletes, all of your students are already logged into the Google Classroom, and they should have already logged into Edmodo, and if they haven't, please encourage them to do that. Well, thank you for your time, and if there are any questions you have, please feel free to email me anytime, and I'm looking forward to a great school year. Even though it's remote, I was very excited to get back in the classroom and see all the students and get a chance to interact, and I look forward to having some face-to-face, in-person time with them sooner rather than later. So I wish you and your student a wonderful beginning to our school year, and hopefully we return to some normalcy before the school year is done. So take care.